Alright, so time to create the health system for our player so that he can take damage from these enemies and the game will end if he gets hit too many times. So how do we do something like that? Well, first of all, we should create something that keeps track of how many lives the player has left or how much energy he still has left. And for that we are going to go to our event sheet here and we are going to use a variable. And there's many different kinds of variables, and I'm going to just first create something called a global variable that is accessible from everywhere in the game. So what are these things called variables? Well, one way to think about them is that they're basically just like empty containers. Like think of a box. You have a box and you can put something in the box and then you can give the box a name. So that way you can kind of keep track of things. We basically want to create now a container for the amount of energy that our player has. So let's just create a global variable. I will right click and choose add global variable. And I will call this variable player health. Okay? And the type can be a number. We can also store text inside of variables, but for the health it makes sense to use a number because maybe the player has only 1 health or 2 health or 3 health, but it should be a number. And then there's the initial value. So how much health does our player have when the game is beginning? And I think maybe 3 would be a good value for that. And here we can just add a description if we want. So let me just write something here like how much energy does the player have left. Okay, so now when the game starts, the player health variable will equal 3. So the player will have 3 of this player health thing. And inside the enemies category, we want to add an event in which if the player bumps into the enemy, then this player health should decrease. So I will select the enemies group and I won't press E to make an event because that event won't go inside of this group, but I will press S to make a sub event, and that means that the event will go kind of inside whatever I have selected here. So I press S to create a sub event for this enemies group, and then I will select my enemy and I will check if it's colliding, if it's kind of bumping into another object. So on collision with another object, and the object I want to check for is, can you guess? The player. So I want to see if the enemy is bumping into the player. Let's hit OK. Done. So this is now our condition. Is the enemy colliding with our player? And if that's true, then we want an action to happen. So I will click add action, and what we want to happen is we want this player health to get smaller. So let me choose this system category here, and here we have a separate area for global and local variables. I will talk about these local variables maybe a bit later, but for now let's just use the global variable, which is kind of a slightly simpler thing. And now we can subtract from a global variable that we have created earlier. So the action that happens is that we subtract and then we choose the variable from which we want to subtract, and we only have this one variable, so that's the only thing we can choose right now. And then we can decide how much energy should the player lose when he's bumping into this enemy, and I think 1 is a good value for that. So let's click done. So once again what happens now is when the enemy is colliding with the player, then we are subtracting 1 from this player health variable. Unfortunately, if I would preview this now, we could not really see anything because there's no visual feedback of when this is decreasing. But maybe one thing that we might do is let's just for now maybe restart the game. So let's create a group for the player. So I'm going to create a new group. I'm going to call this one player, and I'm going to press S to create an event inside of this group. Let's see, let's go into system category and see how much energy we have left. So I'm going to compare this variable here, and I can see, for example, if the player health is less than 1, then we want to restart the game. For now, we will later create a game over screen, but let's just do it let's just have a simple restart first. So why did I not use equal to 0? Well, maybe the player bumps into the enemy 2 times really fast, and it gets registered as 2 collisions, and then the player health could technically go to -1, and then we would not restart because the player health would be -1 and not 0. So in general it's kind of safer to say, let's see if the player health is less than 1, because that means that also negative values fit this condition. So now I will hit done. So again, we are asking if the variable called player health is less than 1, and if that's true, let's add an action, and we are going to go into the system category here, and then we can say restart layout. And now if we get hit 3 times by the enemy, the game should restart. Let's see if that works. I'm going to save and play. So let's go and hit these enemies 3 times, 1, 2, and let's hit that one, and now the game restarted. It's a bit buggy, but let's not worry about that. At the moment we would need to do some other things as well, but because we are not going to leave this restart functionality in here, I'm not going to fix this right now. But as you can see, now the game is checking how much energy we have, and then it's doing something when we have too little energy. So when we have touched the enemies 3 times, then the game restarts. Alright, that's not very nice though, that we can't really see how we are doing. So there's no feedback to us that we are losing energy. So how would we create, for example, this heart system where we have 3 hearts in the beginning? Let's take a look at that next.